man, I have been on this, I was going to say roller coaster, but that's kind of too dramatic. But I've been really sick. I've been sick for about this is my third week. I think it was the flu. I don't really know. But I talked a little bit last week about this. But I guess I'm just like humbled by how much our physical reality affects our mood and affects the kinds of things that we tell ourselves, or at least it did for me. And I honor everybody who struggles with like a chronic illness or chronic pain. Um, I don't know how you do it. I know you overcome it and you still manage to live, amazing lives. But man, I've got a lot to learn from people who thrive when they're ill or they're suffering from chronic pain, because I have not been doing too well. Yay, Yeti dude! Happy Thursday to you too. Happy, 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 happy. I definitely, like, last week I got carried away and I never got to playing my game, so I definitely would like to be able to do that today. We'll see how our chatting unfolds. Today, what I prepared for us is a discussion around anger. And I wanted to do this because, one, like, I've just been kind of angry myself, being sick and really feeling like I lost a lot of my power, a lot of my ability to live life on my own terms, as I was just like completely not in control of my body anymore. So it was on my mind that way. I also just see like anger is such a common emotion that, I just thought, why not? Yay, the Mrs. Scott Evans is here too. Yes, yes. Okay, I have a great group of people. This is amazing. Um, yeah, I'm noticing that like my video feed keeps like flashing out. Right there. Just did it. I don't know what that is. I am not a tech person. I just apologize for it because that's kind of annoying. I can only imagine. Um, Yay, purple Twitch hearts. um, yeah. So I've prepared this thing on anger, and I'm familiar with it as a human being. I'm familiar with it as a coach, and how anger can hold us back from having really the quality of relationships we want. It can get in the way of our careers moving forward. Um, but I wasn't really aware of it in a kind of larger educational sense. So I've done a lot of research, guys. I don't know how to have these conversations without doing some research. But yeah, so hopefully you find it interesting and, just chime in and ask questions. And if I've got the answer, I'll shoot it out, and hopefully this is beneficial. So I think with anger, one of the places like I want to start, where I want to start with is that I think it gets a bad rap, right? Like we tend to think of it as like kind of like this beast, this like uncontrollable beast that takes over and fucks everything up for us, right? Or for our relationships, or we get fucked over by somebody who has uncontrollable anger or is really hot tempered. And it's really easy to see all of the negative side to anger, and it's really easy then to underappreciate the positive side. So I'm going to try to do a balanced take on anger, because I think one thing that gets in the way of managing our anger in a healthy way is our judgment of ourselves when we feel angry or when we lose our temper. And certainly there's times where it may be good to feel a little guilty, like if our anger has hurt somebody physically or something like that. But I think most of the kind of shitstorm that we throw back on ourselves after we've had an outburst isn't helpful. And I think just honoring the fact that anger can be a beneficial thing might help us not judge ourselves so harshly for it, right? Or just to understand that it's really, really normal. So that's kind of my goal for just talking about anger. And one of the really helpful ways to like anything, right? It's to start is to increase our awareness. So I'm really curious what anger feels like to you, like where you feel it in your body. And if there's something you want to put in chat, feel free. And it's really about becoming aware as much as you can about what happens to you as you begin to feel angry. The idea then is because, so for me, example, it kind of depends. Anger is a spectrum of emotion. So on the low end, it's maybe like a little irritation, and on the high end, it's like fury and rage, right? Where you're just like, you go ballistic and you maybe hurt yourself or you hurt somebody else. But it's like this huge range of emotions. So what I've noticed is that, yes, anger in my tummy. That's just what I was going to say, is when I'm never rageful. Like I don't think I've ever really, maybe as a kid, I probably went there, but as an adult, my anger doesn't get to that heightened level. But at the highest level that it does get, it's like a fire exploding in my belly, just like kind of like what Tiki Meher is saying. It explodes in my belly and then it like spreads like up through my chest, and it's hot. Like it feels hot to me. I notice that like my shoulders tense, I clench my jaw, and I like lock my tongue, like I'm gripping. And those kinds of, and this is probably sounding very, very, like you can probably relate to these kinds of things. Maybe you like clench your fists. But anger it's the normal reaction of a human being when their fight response has been triggered. So when you think of fight or flight, we're talking about the fight response today. So it's literally like these things are going on in your brain, hormones are being released, you're perceiving a threat, which triggers the hormones, which then triggers your fight response. So of course, you're going to tense and you're going to be ready to fight, which is why you feel anger. It helps you actually fight what you need to fight to protect yourself. So it helps, though, to know your own physical reaction or body pattern to anger, because as you'll see later on, there are tools you can use to relax those things. And the sooner you notice your body going into anger, the earlier you can catch it on that spectrum and maybe not get rid of the anger or dismiss it because there's something valuable there that your anger is trying to communicate to you, but you can like arrest it from getting to the uncontrollable part of the spectrum where you just lose control. So it's helpful then to know what your cues are, because then you can intervene quickly instead of delaying till it's kind of this beast comes out of you. So I mentioned that anger is both harmful and helpful, and it really all depends on what you do with it. So it's easy to understand how it harms, right? Like it really does erode relationships. It can also decrease your health, and that happens because it increases your stress, your blood pressure, and it can really mess up your sleep. It also like can cause us to get in trouble legally, right? Like society has all these laws in place, and a lot of the things that really high spectrum anger wants us to do, we would get in a lot of trouble if we do them. The benefits are a little bit maybe harder to see, or a little bit more counterintuitive. So I talked a little bit about how it triggers our fight mechanism, right? And so it's this instinctual, very normal response to have. And in that lies one of its benefits, is it really has helped our species survive. And the instinctive expression of anger is to respond aggressively. So this is kind of a side note, but again, like if you beat yourself up for your anger, it might just help you to realize that it's really natural, that it's an instinctive response to get aggressive when you feel angry. And that we all feel anger. We're all always going to feel anger. It's not something that we can just erase magically from our lives. It's all about what we do with it and how we manage it. But it's very, very, very normal to feel anger and to want to be aggressive when you feel angry. So it's, anyways, the benefit is that it is this instinctual thing that's helped us survive. Like, we've had to fight to survive and to procreate as a species. It can motivate us to, be brave and protect other people, right? So one of the things that can trigger our anger, or one of the things that can trigger our anger is when we see a violation of a boundary or a value. So if you see someone's human rights being violated, it's normal to feel angry, and that anger can actually propel you to protect that person, or to be brave. And a lot of activists probably feel a lot of anger, right? So it can be a very beneficial thing. And I think maybe what I think of as the most beneficial part to anger is that underlying message I mentioned, because you're perceiving a threat and that triggers your anger. So there's a message there about what's being threatened. And it could be that somebody is violating an important boundary that you have, or an important value that you have that's worth fighting for. And I don't mean aggressively, it may be assertively fighting for it, but you don't want to just let everybody steamroll you all the time, right? So there's, hi, Upright Oracle, I see you. Yes. And, we have a save, quit, reload. Yay, welcome. Yeah, that's the thing. So bottling up anger, totally normal response. So common. And we're going to get into it a little bit, but the thing about that is it doesn't work. Like you're saying, it gets harder the older you get. It doesn't work because anger ignored, it's kind of like you have a bottle of soda, right? And when you get angry, that somebody shakes that bottle. And if you don't express the anger some way, hopefully in a healthy way, that pressure doesn't get released. And so it just keeps building and building and building and building until the pressure is so intense that lid just gets popped off and you have no control and it kind of just explodes. So yeah, totally normal. Yeah, anger, man. Okay. What was I saying? I'm looking at my notes. Yeah, so we're never going to get to the point where we don't feel angry sometimes, right? It's that human emotion, it's here to stay, but we can learn how to use it constructively. And if you're someone who has a temper, and it really may feel like you can't control your anger, but you can. And it is something expressing anger in a healthy way is something that anybody can learn. It takes practice. And hopefully by the end of our chat today about anger, you'll have some tools that you feel comfortable using and want to use. And anger used, save, quit, reload. Oh yeah, I've never had to deal with that because I'm tall, but I'm little. I know Yeti dude is on the bigger side. Maybe he can speak to that. I would imagine then for people who are just of a larger stature, that it's even more important to get masterful at assertive communication instead of aggressive, or what people might perceive as aggressive, just so that you have more success, right? In your relationships, and that you can have more success getting the things that are important to you out of the relationships, because passivity can be friendly giant syndrome. Yeah. I mean, passivity has its place, but if you're getting angry a lot because your boundaries or your values are being kind of trampled on, passivity isn't going to help you fix that situation. I love that, friendly giant syndrome. Yeah. Okay, so I've mentioned that with anger, it's something happens and you perceive a threat out of it, and your instinctive fight response is triggered and you get angry. So I think the real first step to like handling your anger and managing it in a really healthy way is to really accept that it's your interpretation of what happens that makes you angry. It's not anybody else. So it feels like somebody's pissed you off, but it's not them. It's how you've interpreted what they've done. And that's what causes your anger. That literally nobody but yourself can make you angry. So maybe like a really simple example of this would be like you're driving on the freeway and somebody cuts you off. Like almost everybody I've ever been with like gets angry like instantly. However, if you really like could slow that down for yourself, most likely the instant before you felt angry, you were scared. Like there was a threat to your safety. Your safety was threatened, so you got angry in order to protect yourself. So it's the interpretation of that danger that triggers the anger. And sometimes like in that situation, yeah, like it's justifiable. They really did put your life in danger. But so many times when we're angry, the story we're telling ourselves is not a fair story. It's not an accurate story. It's not a helpful story. And it doesn't at all help you get what you want. And yeah, okay, I hope that makes sense. Ooh, we've got such good chat talking. Yeah, women, yes. I think we do struggle with like getting labeled a bitch if we express our anger, even assertively, which is a whole nother like kettle of fish. Where did kettle of fish come from? Anyways, I'm gonna see if we can get music back, if I like the music. Oh, I lost my headset. I'll have to put that back on. Hold on. I don't know. Let me know if you guys hate the music. I'll kill it if you don't like it. Yeah, wow. Okay, just looking at chat. Okay, so one of so yeah, how much do you guys like buy into this idea that it's your interpretation of the events that triggers your anger? Assuming that you do buy in, and I have a delay, so I'll just let you guys chat it up. One of the most helpful tools then to kind of get a handle on your anger is to get really good at considering alternative ways of interpreting the situation. So because almost every single time you're able to do that, like step away from the situation and think about it a little bit more rationally, you walk away with a more accurate picture and a more level-headed assessment, and your anger lessens. Yeah, you are. Like, that's the thing. We are definitely interpreting anger from an outside-in approach, but what's really going on is an inside-out approach. It's very counterintuitive, and I think that's why anger can be so difficult. Because like any intense emotion, which anger is, and when you feel it, it's literally like your cognitive ability shuts down. And so not only are you losing your cognitive ability, you're also thinking that it's an outside factor when really it's an inside factor, which requires cognition to recognize. So it is a mess. It is an absolute mess. Yeah, absolute mess, but it is something that we can manage, I promise. So some of the like kind of common traps people fall into with their anger, and when they're, creating these stories about why they're angry and why they're justified to be angry, one of them is they overgeneralize. So we say things like always, never, everyone. It's like you always like slam the door in my face, or you never clean the bathroom, whatever, right? Like and it's not true, right? Like they don't always do that. They don't never do it. it just feels that way. Yeah, and overgeneralizing, you do that to somebody, it's going to probably trigger their anger and just escalate it. Hello, Sparta Remix 1. Hi. Okay. So another trap that we fall into in our interpretations is having a really rigid view of what people should and shouldn't do. So like if I think, let me think of a good one. What do I actually think? I think people shouldn't throw trash in the street. Like that really that triggers my anger. You know, and I have a very rigid view about it, which, you know, may be justified. I think a lot of people feel that way. But I think about like my neighborhood, like there are no trash cans. Like for many, many years, no trash cans whatsoever. And yet I would still get very angry at people for putting trash in the street where the street sweeper is going to come that week and pick it up. Yeah, and I probably could have been a little bit more fair about the situation. Well, that's kind of a silly example, but yes. I'm just trying to catch up with chat. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so like when, save, quit, reload, like when people aren't being logical and aren't, like when they have this rigid view I'm talking about, like where it's like kind of like really narrow thinking, that can get me mad too. I don't know, maybe it's helpful like just hearing how like anybody who's angry or emotional, it's almost impossible to see something broadly until they calm down. So it might not completely be their fault. Yeah, but I struggle with that one too, for sure. Yeah. Another kind of trap that we fall into is mind reading or jumping to conclusions. So like we'll often assume we know what somebody else means, or we'll assume we know what they want, and we're often wrong even when we know the person really well. And that can just escalate the problem, and we can be angry over absolutely nothing. And it really requires us like knowing we're making an assumption and checking in with the other person for sure. Yeah, that's such a good point, Mrs. Scott Evans, because yeah, we all have our lenses, we all have our worldview, and you know, some are more narrow than others, and they're all different than ours, and they're basically all we're saying is like there's gajillions of reasons to have conflict. but hopefully we don't do that all the time. Oh, this is another trap that some people do, is that you like, and I've been guilty of this, but it's like I'll go through my day and I'll like be looking for things, like little things that are frustrating or annoying, and like I start like subconsciously keeping count, and instead of dealing with the little things like head on, I just let them like start to bottle up, and eventually when you've bottled up enough of that little anger, it just explodes and kind of just makes a mess. And it's you'll know that that's happened to you when like you're in this like very heightened like argument or whatever, and it's over like the fact that a hot dog fell on the floor, right? It's over something like totally like small and tiny and doesn't justify the level of your emotion. Chances are you let things bottle up. Another big one is we blame others. We blame others, and we do it one-sidedly. So we do it to the point where we don't at all really take responsibility for our part of the situation. Or if we do, we don't, like, we just don't let that affect us, and we just keep blaming them unfairly. That's nice, Tiki Mahara, that it's shifting for you. Yeah, like that, like, you know, like you're like kind of laughing off your husband's like quirks. Laughter is super helpful. Obviously not at somebody else's expense, and like definitely not at their expense in front of them, but just there's something about bringing humor into a situation that really helps you not take yourself too seriously, and maybe helps the other person not take themselves too seriously, and just like kind of like loosens it up and makes it easier to just deal with. So anytime you can laugh at yourself, I am a huge fan. Huge fan. Oh, so this one's kind of interesting, I thought. One of the last like kind of thought pitfall I have, or trap, is that people who struggle with anger a whole lot, they tend to expect or demand what people who don't struggle with anger desire. So things like respect or fairness, agreement, or like a willingness to do something your way. It's people who just desire those things. They desire respect, they desire agreement, they desire willingness, but they don't have to have it. Don't get angry as much. They'll feel disappointed, but they don't get angry. So if you are getting angry a lot, it really may be that you're just expecting or demanding respect or fairness, that it just always has to be that way. And when it's not, and that's a choice. That it is a choice that you've made if you're that way, and you don't have to do it that way. You can just desire it and work towards fulfilling your desire, and therefore being less attached to less triggered when you don't get it. Yeah, save, quit, reload. Yes. That's like, one of the things I read for today was like, if you've got the space for it, and I don't know many people who do, but they called it a primal yell, and they were like, go somewhere private and just like yell out your anger. It feels really fucking good. Yeah, like that's the thing, like that I personally struggle with anger, is because emotions, like even the painful ones, they feel best when they're being expressed, like when they're able to like move out of your body. Like a good cry can be really pleasurable, and that it's just like cathartic and you get it over with. And like anger, if you can have that primal yell, like feels good. But with anger, we're not like, yeah, yes, a plastic bat on a couch. Yes. Like there's a reason why therapists, like they have like those foam, I don't know if they really do, but in cartoons they do, like the foam bats. But yeah, like that stuff feels really good, and yet with anger, we get in trouble for it because it is scary, and it is that it's threatening to other people, and it can really hurt other people. So, and then we get damaged by it, right? Because relationships matter, not being in jail matters. But yes, Primal Yell, Upright Oracle. So that's like the trouble, like the opportunity or challenge is to be able to express your anger in a way that you don't get the bad stuff from anger, you just get the good stuff. Yeah, I don't think I've done a lot of yelling. I don't know if I've ever done it in a way where it was just like cathartic and didn't like shred my vocal cords. I gotta find a way to go do one of those. It sounds really fun. I'm convinced. So the goal then really, or what people consider the goal of anger management, is that you're able to understand the message that your anger is trying to tell you, and then you're able to express that message in a healthy way without losing control. And there are like 3 traditional ways of managing your anger, and that's to express it, that's to suppress it, or to calm it. So expressing anger in an assertive way, not aggressive, but assertive, is considered the healthiest choice, but it requires really that you know what your needs are. It requires that you really are super clear on that message and that you're open to communicating that, which can be really vulnerable, and that you're open to then coming up with creative solutions. So it's the healthiest, it's the most helpful. It also requires the most vulnerability and courage and awareness. So it's got a big challenge to it. Oh, not anger related. This is Scott Evans. Oh man. Yeah, so I don't like, have you guys had any experience with this? But I've heard of people who like are getting massages and the masseuse will like hit a knot, and as they work on the knot, like all of a sudden the person will have like this cathartic outburst of an emotion. It could be sadness or anger or fear, but it's like literally it seems like the emotion, like when we don't express the emotion, it may like reside somehow in part of our tissue somewhere, which I do not understand that. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence. I don't know if it's real, but yeah, like I just wonder like because anger tends to bottle up if you don't deal with it and then explode, like where does it go? Like where is it being bottled up, right? Like like what? How does this work? Does anybody know? Yeah, but just getting it out can feel so good. So suppressing anger, it's typically not very helpful in the long run, but that's where you basically just distract yourself by thinking about something else, maybe something positive. And it's not ideal because you are ignoring or you're suppressing your anger, and it just then leaks out in ways that aren't likely to get you the kinds of things you want. So it tends to result in like passive aggressive behavior, or where someone gets really hostile or critical just in general, like their personality kind of becomes that way, or maybe like they develop a habit of putting people down. It basically all those things that like lead to you not having incredibly successful relationships. So suppressing it, long term, not the best choice. Yeah, I mean, Upright Oracle, it really could. Like, I don't know, but I did this, so I was an actor for a long time, and I was in this voice class, and it was a technique where, like, this is so weird, you'd be moving your body, and, like, your legs would be I don't know how to describe this, it's gonna sound so wacky. It was wacky. But my legs would be in the air, and I learned to let go of all the tension, and, like, to breathe and just make spontaneous sounds, okay? And so all kinds of spontaneous emotions would arise, but your legs would start tremoring and, like, just shaking. And the theory of that was that you were letting out past emotions, and that okay, this is what it reminds me of. Ooh. Oh, that's so fascinating. Save, quit, reload. I love that. That is fascinating. Yeah, I mean, he had to be emotionless for so long, like so many hours. Like that was his profession. His job was to be an emotionless character. Wow. So I heard of a study on PTSD where they looked at squirrels, and when I love squirrels, so I was instantly like attracted, like that's how I found this study. But they gave the squirrels a trauma, and then, okay, so animals naturally, and like you probably have seen this with dogs, but when they experience something that's traumatic, they literally shake, right? Like they shake it off. And so animals do that. Like it's a natural instinctive reaction. And so what they did is they took squirrels, they exposed them to a trauma, and then with half the squirrels, they let them shake it off, and the other half, they arrested that and didn't let them do it. The squirrels that didn't shake it off developed PTSD. The squirrels that did shake it off didn't. And I just couldn't help but think, like, we're animals, right? And yet it is not acceptable, like, when you see something traumatic or you experience something hard, like, for you just to start shaking it, right? Or like to do a primal yell and shake. Like, that's not acceptable, but maybe we need to do it. Like, maybe that's part of this, I don't know, this idea of why it's important not to bottle emotions up, not to suppress them, but to let them move. Especially the powerful ones like anger. Okay, so we have expressing it, we have suppressing it, and the last traditional way is calming. So it is what it sounds like. It's where you control your internal or physical reactions. So you're able to reverse those changes. So you're able to lower your heart rate and release the tension of the anger and relax. And what this does is it helps to slide your anger down the sliding scale to a more manageable level, right? Because when anger gets really really high, it's a hard thing to control. So by releasing our habitual tension and calming, we may go from rage to anger or from anger to frustration. So, and that helps us approach the situation more constructively. So kind of just, there's all kinds of books on this, but one of the most helpful ways to express your anger is by using what people call I statements. And the whole idea is that you, instead of, when you do communicate your anger, or, you know, whatever you need to communicate around your anger, instead of saying, you do this, you did this, and I'm angry, or you, which tends to escalate the situation because it makes them defensive, you switch it and you say, I feel angry, you know, when you pushed me, because it scared me. But you make it mostly about yourself, or about yourself as much as you can. So I feel frustrated when you don't take out the trash on Mondays like you said you would, or I feel pissed right now because I'm feeling disrespected and like I don't matter. The more you can do that, the higher the likelihood is that your message will be received. So that's kind of like everybody's like top tool for expressing yourself. When your anger is too high and you're unable to express yourself assertively using an I statement, or you're unable to get clear on what that message is underneath your anger so you know what to express, it's really, really helpful. That's when you want to bring in the calming down stuff. And you want to calm down before you speak or you react. And that can be as simple as taking a 5-minute break. So, you know, having something you can say to somebody to ask for that break can be a really, really good technique. It's also incredibly beneficial to master a relaxation technique ahead of time so that you can use it in the moment. You can use it to arrest your... okay, so I could say it like this. Once you have awareness of how that anger shows up in your body, right? Like we talked about it, it explodes in my stomach and it spreads to my chest, or I notice that I'm clenching my jaw. Once you have that awareness and you start to see that you're doing those things, you quickly bring in and start doing the relaxation technique you've mastered, and that helps to arrest your anger from getting higher, and you can see it more clearly and express what you need to express. So I hope this is all making sense. And if anybody knows something different, please let me know. This is just based off of like, you know, what I know as a life coach, but like much more about like my quick and dirty research. So yeah, and I love to learn. So just thinking of like common relaxation techniques. One very common one is to breathe deeply, but when you do that, you want to breathe from your gut. So you want to breathe from your belly. A lot of us, let's see if I can breathe just in the chest, and that's a fearful response. That's what our bodies do when we're afraid. So it doesn't help your anger. So you really want to start breathing from your gut, or when you're fighting, it's like you don't breathe as deeply. So to counter that, you breathe deeply. You can also just have a mantra that you start saying to yourself, like relax, or take it easy, or you got this, like you're safe, whatever you need to tell yourself. You could have this mantra that you say while you're consciously releasing those habitual tension points. Some people find it beneficial to visualize a relaxing experience. Some people can take a moment to do, like if they take a time out, they go and they do some stretching or some deep breathing, they do yoga. You can also, like, this is interesting, you can also like tune in to like a really nice smell. Like you can use your senses. So tune into a nice smell or listen to a beautiful piece of music. Just there's something about that where it's not really you're suppressing the anger, but it's our senses help us relax. And exercising too, like if you've been in a fight or you're just feeling a lot of anger, same is true I think with anxiety. Getting up and moving and like going for a run or something can be really, really helpful. So yeah, like I realize this is a lot, a lot of stuff that I'm kind of just spewing out there. I do have show notes, and I also have a downloadable handout for some of the management exercises I'm going into later if you're interested. Save, quit, reload. I have a technique to calm when I feel severely mad. What? That's amazing. You sing the Model Major General song, right? Oh my God. That's amazing. That song, like, that's, yep. Yeah, like you can't, like that song requires such attention that you really can't focus. Focus on what's pissing you off. That's, yeah. That's awesome. So yeah, this is a lot, and one of the things I read about this that I thought was helpful for me was that when you consider that the main like negative of anger is that it erodes your relationships, whether that's personal or work, like to me that really hits home because I'm really connected to how important people are in my life. And it's like when people have habitual anger, they tend to be less willing to forgive people. And they tend to prioritize being right or winning over their relationships. So if you really value your relationships, you can use that to just motivate yourself. And you can say something like maybe your mantra for relaxing is, I put my relationships first. And that's just something you say to in your head when you start to notice your anger spots are getting tense or you're feeling the anger in your belly. That doesn't mean that you let people bulldoze you, but it just means that you put relationships first, and relationships are, both people are equally important. So yes, sing Master of the House from Les Mis. I like that, like both, see that's the thing is like both of those songs to me, like lighten it up, right? Like in a way it's like don't take this so seriously. Which is that humor piece. It's just brilliant. Next time I'm mad, I'm gonna think of those songs and probably not be so mad anymore. So thank you. There's one more like major piece to this that really is that's coming from a deeper level, which is why I've saved it for the end, or towards the end of our chat today. If your automatic reaction to many situations is anger, chances are that your temper is covering up your true feelings. And these are typically the reason why you're unaware of the deeper feelings is because they're really uncomfortable. So it's things like embarrassment, insecurity, shame, vulnerability, hurt. But here's the thing, like if that's the case for you, and I think it is for everybody from time to time, if you don't address your true feelings, you're not gonna master anger management. I don't think it's gonna work. And so for people who this applies to, it's often because they lack a strong, like, independent sense of their self-worth. That they get their self-worth from others validating them. So when you think about it, if you're dependent on others for your self-worth, that's giving them a shit ton of power, right? And anytime you sense or even whiff out a little speck of criticism, it's very, very threatening. Very, very threatening. And this idea comes from a psychologist named Leon F. Seltzer. And if you get my show notes, there's a link to his articles on the subject. And he's done, I think his whole practice, his whole professional life has been around anger. And he's got a lot of really amazing articles that I thought were just like, mwah, sublime. So anger can be used as a protective mechanism. And so some of the things the reason why I think this happens, or why Leon Seltzer thinks this happens, is that our brain releases hormones when we're angry. It releases norepinephrine, which is a hormone that actually numbs our vulnerable feelings, which kind of blew my mind that we can do that in our own brains. But so anger, in a way, is self-medicating, and in that sense, it can really be almost addicting. So what comes to mind is if you're in a relationship, in an intimate relationship, and you're starting to feel vulnerable, which everybody does, it isn't uncommon to start getting angry and to start using fear as a way to protect yourself from having to be vulnerable. And one of the great things about fear is it pushes people away. And so there can be this kind of unsatisfying dance in relationships where as soon as somebody gets close to you, you get angry to push them away, but you don't really want them to leave completely. So eventually, once they get far enough away, your anger tapers off, and then you get sweet. And it's like, and it's all there because the anger is this like protective mechanism to the vulnerability. And so getting more comfortable with being vulnerable can really, really help make anger not an issue if you struggle with it. And also, like, if you are a person who, like, inherently, like, if you believe you don't have inherent value, or like you doubt like your own power, and you often feel powerless, anger is a very quick way of tricking yourself into feeling like you have power, right? Like, the other hormones that get released are amphetamine and epinephrine or adrenaline. And those like literally exist to give you a heightened sense of self-control as you launch into fight mode. So that's another way where anger is kind of this, not self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's kind of like to me, it's like it's a real clear trap, right? Like if you are getting your sense of self-worth from other people, of course you're going to use anger because it's numbing your vulnerable feelings, and it's making you feel powerful when inside you really don't. So it's pretty I was going to say pretty powerful, but I just what's chat saying? Yeah, exactly. Anger is a feeling of power. Like, you are literally marshaling your body in a powerful way so that you can punch somebody, right? So anger is a way that people, unsuccessfully use to control their situation, because anger really doesn't get people the results they want usually. Yeah, and also like when you're angry, it's usually like you're usually blaming the other person. So if your sense of self-worth is threatened by the person in front of you, to get angry and then start blaming them bolsters your sense of self-worth because you're tearing them down and saying like they don't really matter. It also helps you not take responsibility, right? So both of those kind of just help bolster you. But it's like an artificial quick bolstering. It doesn't actually fix the problem because you don't, like the person doing that doesn't tend to go, oh, holy shit, I'm telling myself, like I'm the one that's like putting my sense of self-worth on somebody else. Like I could take that power back. You know, like we're responsible for acknowledging the inherent value that we have. It's a hard thing sometimes to do. And I think a lot of people struggle with it for sure. I know I did and do from time to time for sure. Yeah, so if you do find that anger is one of like your main default reactions, it might help to ask what your anger is protecting you from. You know, and it might be that by working on like learning how to have your self-worth come from the inside, that you can overcome like your temper, which may be something you thought you maybe never could overcome. So I think that's hopeful. I hope it feels hopeful. So the kind of like, I don't know, kind of like to wrap this up in a way, there's some exercises. And one is to, and again, like I have this in a handout. So if anybody wants this, you can, I'm on Patreon, and like for like $2 or whatever a month, you can sign up to get it automatically. It's Punch Life Back on Patreon. You can also just email me, and I'd be happy to email this stuff to you. So it's info@punchlifeback.com. If you want to email me and get it, happy to do it. So don't feel like ever on like when you're watching my Thursday cast that you have to take notes. Like I've got you covered. Okay, so the first exercise is to keep some sort of anger journal. And this is really to build awareness. So it doesn't have to be a journal that you write. Like I don't personally enjoy that. I like to talk, so I record it. I never ever like go back and listen, which may be a bad thing or not as helpful as a written journal, but I don't do it if I have to write it. I do it if I can speak it in private. So that's just an idea there. But what you want to do is you want to, yay, hopeful and helpful. Thank you, Upright Oracle. Happy to hear that. If it's helpful and hopeful to just one person, I consider that a huge win for the day. Yeah, so you want to take note of each time you feel angry. So that's a journal entry. And obviously, like, you probably aren't going to be able to do it right in the moment, right? You're not going to be like, oh, hold on, I'm angry, let me, and then I'll talk to you, right? So it's going to be after the fact. But you want to take note of each time you feel angry. And you want to ask yourself what happened to your body as you got angry. So you want to develop that awareness of your habitual tension patterns so that the calming exercise can then be used to release them in the moment. You want to then do your best to unpack the story you're telling yourself about what's triggering your anger. Hey, thank you for putting that in chat, Mrs. Scott Evans. Thank you. Yeah, so you want to unpack the story. So you want to ask things like, what threat are you perceiving? What boundary or value feels violated? And then you don't want to stop, because then you want to challenge that story. So you want to, go like, how might somebody else or how might you interpret the situation differently? Like, what other interpretation is possible? You want to ask if you're jumping to conclusions, or are you mind reading? Are you using words like always, never, or they should or shouldn't? Are you blaming them? Are you avoiding taking responsibility? Are you expecting something that's more reasonable to desire? like fairness and a willingness to do things your way, like we talked about? Or did you let the little things like bottle up and stack up until you couldn't take it anymore? And then, so it's a journal entry. Then you want to dig even deeper, and you want to ask yourself if your sense of self-worth feels threatened. And if the answer is yes, just ask yourself why you're giving the other person that kind of power over you. And it may be that you decide it's time for you to take that power back for yourself. So that's the journal exercise. Again, like Patreon or email me. I have it all written down in a handout, much easier than just remembering what I just said. The other exercise is to practice your calming technique. So you want to choose a technique and you want to really practice it as often as you can until you can do it on the fly successfully. Like this reminds me of, so I do a lot of dog sitting and I love, love, love animals. And when you're training a dog, like you do it at home, right? And they get really, really good at like sitting and staying at the house. And then you up the challenge by like taking them on a walk. And then it's like they've forgotten. They just can't handle it. They can't sit and they can't stay. Eventually they can sit and stay on a walk. And then you up it again. You like take them to a dog park and they can't handle it, right? Well, that's the same thing here. When you're practicing your calming technique on your own, like it's easy to do. But then you want to start doing it when you're slightly annoyed. And once that's really successful, you want to do it when you're frustrated and then when you're angry. And eventually, like you could get to a point where even if you're super pissed, your calming technique is helping you. But it takes practice. Just like a puppy. Yay, thanks Save Quit Reload. I really appreciate hearing that. It is such a strange thing to be like talking to my webcam, hearing only myself. Like I know you guys are there, but it's just like it's not quite the same thing as having a true back and forth conversation. So I never know how it goes. So thank you for the feedback and letting me know how it's going for you. The third exercise is really, really simple, but it really does help to like pre-write a statement for when you need to take a timeout. Something that like sounds better than this is gonna sound really formal, but like if I'm getting really angry, I might say something like, you know what? I noticed that I'm feeling angry and I'm gonna go take 5 minutes to calm down because I really want to have a constructive conversation and I can't do that when I'm like this. So to have something like that written down and memorized and just kind of like practice saying it on your own so that you're more likely to use it in the moment would be great. And then you're going to be, I think, as prepared as you can be. And just remember too that like we have such a tendency to be really fucking hard on ourselves. And like anything like this where we're trying to change our habits and learn a new skill, we're not going to be perfect at all, and we're never going to be perfect. Even when you've mastered this, there's still going to be times where your anger might get a little bit away from you and you say something you wish you hadn't, right? Or you're having night drinking with your friends and then all of a sudden you get angry and you say something you wish you hadn't, right? Like there's all kinds of reasons why we're never going to be perfect. So in those times where you feel like you've messed up, just we all do. And the worst thing you can do to yourself then is to beat yourself up for it, and you'll be a lot less likely to get back on the horse of this training and this practice. So just for like practice self-forgiveness. It'll help you be able to forgive other people more, which will help your relationships. Yeah, I don't know. I say that often, but we just tend to beat ourselves up about absolutely everything in the world.